theme for this year, this Exploring Universal Truth Principles in the World's Religions. The monthly theme for January is Hinduism Part 1, very creative, and February is Hinduism Part 2. And today is Revelations, Insights, and Ahas. Today is essentially an introductory. You know, every book has to have their introduction. And, you know, first night of class, you have the introductory class where you learn what the curriculum is and where you're going. So that's what today is. And the main question that we want to be with throughout this year is, what is my path? What is your path? If someone asked you now, what has been your path and what is your path now, how would you answer that? Do you have a sense of where you're going, where this path is taking you to? Do you have a sense of destination, or is it just whatever is arising in the moment? How would you describe your path? And the intention is, the reason why the talk is called Revelations, Insights, and Ahas is however we answer that question, that we continue to stay open and available throughout this year of how we would answer that question, how we would answer what is your path as individuals. How would I answer that question? And so we get to explore those different possibilities. Years ago, I had this experience, this revelation, of realizing that my path and who I am were one and the same thing. And as I've been with that, I recognize the more I understand my path, the more I understand myself. And the more I understand myself, the more I understand my path. That they're deeply and profoundly connected. And one of the things that I love about being on this journey in communities such as this is that we all get to find our own answers. I think in the past, there are spiritual organizations, and it's all good. Everyone radiates to what excites them. And so there's some spiritual organizations where everybody in the room basically has the same path. So you can go into a Christian church and everyone basically, they read the Bible and they teach the same ideas. I knew I was home when I was at Agape. And Agape is a New Thought, just like we are a New Thought community. And they were teaching oneness. And while there, I recognized that there was a very active Jewish group that would meet every Sunday evening. There was a big group of people that would go to Siddha Yoga. So as soon as service was over on Sunday, they would all go to the Siddha Yoga and do chanting. There was a Buddhist priest that would come and sit next to me, and he would do his temple service in his Buddhist temple in the morning, and then he would come to Agape later in the morning to go to the service. And we were all coming together as one. You know, I did my self-realization. I would go and meditate on Friday and Sunday evenings. But on Sunday morning, we all came together and recognized our oneness. There were 1,200 people that would go through the classes, the Science of Mind classes that were taught there. So we were learning these principles, but at the same time, using those principles to discover our own way of practicing it. Oh yeah, there was another huge group of people that were applying it to psychology or taking a master's degree in spiritual psychology. And I feel like I've done all these programs because people would bring their passion to the church and explain what they are doing. And for me, that's home. Experiencing everybody's uniqueness, the passion that people have for your own path, and sharing it in a community, and not saying you're different and you're separate because your path doesn't look like mine, so I need to go to a separate place on Sunday, but that we can all come together on a Sunday and say, as much as we are unique, I recognize below these paths is the one power and the one presence. Or as the symbol is, you have the wheel, and all the different paths are the spokes on the wheels, but at the heart of the wheel, at the hub of the wheel, is this oneness that sources all these different paths. So I'm grateful to be on this journey with you and to continue to open up to my own revelations and insights and ahas. May I never be done on my journey, just as hopefully none of us are done on our journey, to continue to open and experience this divine presence. We're going to have 3 books. We're going to primarily use 3 books throughout the year. Mitch Horowitz, who is the editor-in-chief of Tarcher Penguin, made an invitation last January, which always stuck with me, because many ministers, what they do is they pick a different book every month. And I tried that, and I just don't read that fast. It's just way too much reading, and I don't feel like I ever really get what I'm reading, because you're just sort of reading, and then you have to read the next book and the next book, and it always, for me, is sort of staying on the surface of it. And so Mitch Horowitz put out this invitation on Facebook for people to pick one book and stick with it for 9 months. Just really dig into that one book and let its ideas seep into you and practice it in every area of your life. So it's sort of in that vein that we're only doing 3 books this year, and we're doing it for 12 months, not 9 months, and we're going to go slowly through these books. It's not about just reading the book, putting it down, and I got that information. It's about letting the information, reading a few pages in these books and letting it seep in you and recognize, who am I? Allowing for those revelations and insights and ahas about my path, about my connection with it. So this isn't just about intellectual stimulation, although there is that as well, hopefully, but also allowing it to sink deeper into our heart, into our soul, and into our life. So y'all feel good about that? Is that okay? So the 3 books that we're going to be using, and I'm just going to begin with the first one, is The World's Religions by Huston Smith. Now, it's an interesting book to be with. My experience, having been in New Thought communities for a long time, is that we are very open and accepting of world's religions, and at the same time, I would say predominantly I hear a lot of people say, I am spiritual but not religious. The idea being is that what matters to us is the spirit of it, that direct connection of pure spirit, but religion tends to squash that spirit. Huston Smith tells a joke, and I think at Ram Dass also, I've heard different versions of the joke, so I don't know who said the original one, but the idea is there's this woman on search of truth, and she finally found truth, and Satan's minions come to Satan, and they're like, oh no, she's found truth, what are we going to do? Satan's like, I got this. And he goes over to the woman, and he takes truth, and he says, here, let me institutionalize it for you. And I think many of us have that feeling. I've heard so many people, I'm not into religious organization. It sort of squashes the spirit of truth. It's controlling. It takes the heart out of it. It takes the spirit out of it. So why would we then spend all this time on religion? Well, there's 2 different reasons, but one of the reasons why we're using Huston Smith's book is he really focuses on what the ideals of what religion teaches. He tells another joke, which I really like, is the problem with religion is people got involved. And in essence, we could say that about anything. I was listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson, the scientist, and he was giving the ideals of science. Science is only about truth. And I'm listening to him, and it was great. The ideals of scientific discovery is great. But the idea that scientists don't have agendas, or they can't be bought out, we see in the tobacco industry, it's been revealed, but people have agendas. They've shown scientifically that even if you go in with a little bit of an agenda, that affects the outcome of the research. So there are the ideals of science, and then there's the actual human element that comes into the scientific process. Well, that happens with anything, philosophy, politics, and of course religion. We bring in our human stuff, and it makes it messy and not necessarily distorted. So Huston Smith isn't focused on the dates and the history of how people have practiced it and the battles or anything like that. He's just saying, what's the ideal? Just as Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about the ideals of science, for us to really learn what are the ideals of these religions, whether before humans got involved, what was the heart of it? The other value of looking at religions is, think of Ken Wilber's definition of, he actually gives many definitions of spirituality, but for him, he decided that the definition of spirituality that meant the most to him is that as God is infinite, and I'm using the word God, recognize that there are many names for this. It's the one, it's the thing itself, it's spirit, it's the divine, it's Brahma. We'll look at all the different names, but it transcends any name. I just use God because it's familiar and comfortable, but please translate in your head if it bothers you. He said that the essence of this eternal one is infinite. So therefore, it has infinite perspectives, and to only take one perspective, we are actually limiting our understanding and experience of the divine one. So that the more perspectives that we can take, the more infinitely our perspectives are, actually the closer we are connecting with the divine, with the infinite nature of the divine. And so the world's religions, as we begin to study the world's religions, is giving us, because there's no question that Hinduism and Buddhism and Islam and Judaism and all have very distinct expressions of the one. They are not all exactly the same. And when we experience even the mysticism, the oneness, there's slight nuances that are different. And so we get to start exploring that as we continue to ask, what is my path? Stay open to revelations, insights, and ahas as we open to these different perspectives. But then we also have, as we're looking at paths, a challenge put down by Paramahansa Yogananda. My first introduction to Paramahansa Yogananda was going to his lake shrine temple in Pacific Palisades. I don't know if any of you have been there. It's right off Sunset. It's beautiful. It's a man-made lake in the middle of life. And as you walk around the lake, he has some of Gandhi's ashes there as well. But as you walk around the lake, there's statues to all the different world's religions and quotes. And I love that. I just immediately felt at home there. I love that universality. But he also makes the point that as much as we love all the different world's religions, they're at the base of the mountain. And mysticism, knowing our oneness with God, is at the top of the mountain, metaphorically. In order to get to the top of the mountain, we have to pick a path. And he said far too many people spend too much time circling the mountain and learning all these different perspectives. But eventually, if you're going to climb the mountain, you have to pick a path. You have to say, this is the path that I'm going to make any further direction, because the path will get hard, and you have to stay with it. Because if you just, this is a new experience, or this is a new experience, you never actually get to go into the depth and the height. And I'm talking, and the depth and the height, I think of Carl Jung. He said you can only go as high as you go deep. And that goes back to another thing that Ken Wilber said. As much as he loves to integrate, he's very similar to Ernest Holmes. I think they're part of the same lineage of loving to look at all the different religions, philosophy, science, politics, business, and how do they all integrate? How does this all work together? He is an advocate for picking a path that has a lineage. And his argument for that is that we need roots, with the idea that you can only go as high as you go deep, that we need to find a path that has some history in the human realm. If everything that we're doing is brand new, it doesn't ever actually gain strength. It doesn't gain an interior power. And I remember, because I didn't feel connected with any particular one religion, that sort of threw me. And I started asking myself, what is my lineage? Do I have a lineage? Do I have roots? So it's a question that I'm inviting, today's talk is really about asking a lot of questions, because it's so boring to answer them. It's way more interesting to ask questions. The revelations and insights and ahas will lead to the answers. So again, asking yourself, what is my path? Does my path have any lineage, roots? Is there a path to this style of looking at different religions and philosophies, of integrating? Is that a path? Does that have roots? What are its roots? And exploring possibly what are the roots of looking at diversity within oneness. What is your path? What are your revelations, insights, and ahas? And we're looking at world's religions to open ourselves to that. The next book we'll be using is Thunder of Silence. And I love this book because it's almost paradoxically opposite of the world's religions. First of all, it's by Joel Goldsmith. How many of you have heard of Joel Goldsmith? Oh, almost everybody. How many of you have read some of Joel Goldsmith? Most of you. And how many of you have read a book cover to cover with Joel Goldsmith? A little bit less, but still quite a few. I want you to think about how you first found out about Joel Goldsmith. Like, who introduced you to Joel Goldsmith? You did. Forget that. Okay, besides me, if anyone else has been, and this isn't just a question to answer within yourself. The reason why I say that is because Joel is very sort of anti-organization. He is anti-structure. He is anti-being in bondage to anything. His entire message, so we don't have to read him because I'll just tell you it now. No, I'm kidding. Is to live completely fresh in the moment. We hear it in Power of Now. And to not hold on to the past. To not, even if you've had spiritual revelations in the past, don't hold on to those. Always be completely empty in the moment and say, what does Spirit want to reveal of itself now? He was very suspect of any organizational or institutionalized idea, and I think many of us resonate with that, the direct contact of Spirit, living from and as Spirit in every moment. And so he did not see, by the way, just to know a little bit about him, he was a Christian Science practitioner, which is a mental science that is similar to Centers for Spiritual Living, though they're very closed and we are very open. But he was a mental science practitioner for 16 years. And he begins his book, Thunder of Silence, saying that often when we have a revelation from Spirit, it wraps up against sacred beliefs, sacred ideas. And for him, the shift, the revelation, the insight that he got from the stillness, from the thunder that he received in the silence, was that thoughts have no power, which went direct contrast from the mental science that he was in, the mental thinking. He actually was invited to speak at a Science of Mind church once, and he talked about thoughts have no power, and they never invited him back. But that's what it's not about what his revelations and insights and ahas are. It's what our revelations and insights and ahas are. And as we continue to stay open, as I was saying, what is our path up until now? We may, as we go in this journey, have revelations and insights and ahas that come directly from pure Spirit that might counter something that we've always believed, a sacred idea of what we think about who we are and what our path is, or what we believe about our cosmology. And that's that willingness to be completely open and available. We can know what we think we know, but at the same time be willing to let it go, allowing new awarenesses. And so this is what he advocated for. And the reason why I asked about how he found out about Joel Goldsmith, because this is the challenge. Because he doesn't believe in organizations and institutions, how do people continue to learn about what he teaches? And it's generally through people in organizations. So I found out Joel Goldsmith because a minister in a New Thought church gave me this book, Thunder of Silence, and said, here, read it, because he was saying there's no such thing as good or evil, and I thought he was insane. And so he said, here, read this book. So that's how I was introduced through Joel Goldsmith. So it was organization and institutions, that which he is against, that actually propels his teaching to stay alive and present in the moment. So there's no simple answer to these. There's no black and white. If this is bad, this is wrong. It's your own self-discovery. Are you spiritual and also religious? How do we play with this dichotomy? And he really will bring that up. I also like that he will be bringing in the spiritual essence of this direct contact, of living in the present moment, the living spirituality to the world's religions, because world's religions can get rather dull if we only are looking about it. Fortunately, Houston Smith doesn't write about it in terms of history, but in the present tense. We want this journey to be alive and now. What does this look like as alive? How is Spirit revealing these different ideas from the different religions, these eternal values? How is it revealing it to us now? And so, as we read Thunder of Silence, which is a very profound and deep book, he actually sat on the information for this Thunder of Silence was a class that he taught to his students, and he got the information, it was revealed to him, and he waited 9 years before he taught his students because he didn't think they were ready to hear the information. We're going straight to the depth. Someone said to me, you're starting with Thunder of Silence. It's an interesting place to start, but I know you all are so deep. You're ready. So we have Thunder of Silence, we have the world's religions, we're exploring what is my path. We're opening to insights, revelations, and ahas. We're looking at spirituality and religion. Is religion working for me or not working for me, or all the many nuances and degrees in between. And our final book has nothing to do with either one of these things. It just came to me, I wanted to read Reign of Gold. And since I wanted to read it, I just said, well, let's make it a book of the year. So Reign of Gold, not Reign of the Gold. Reign of Gold is written by Victor Villaseñor, and I read it. I just graduated from ministerial school. I mean, I was so done with school by the time 50 papers. I remember the last class my senior year, I fell asleep for like 4 hours on a Saturday during the class because I was just so tired. I was done. There was no room in the inn. I had nothing left. And then we had to take a 12-hour written exam on a computer. So I was really done, and I didn't want to have anything to do with learning anything. And yet suddenly I found myself with all this time. I wasn't used to having all this free time after work. So I wanted to read something, and the woman in my office at Agape, she was a graphic designer, she said, I was at this party this weekend, and there was this woman at this party. Her name was Lupe, and she was like the queen. I mean, everybody circulated around her. You should have seen her. She was just had this elegance, and people were just in awe of her. And she said, and there's a book about her life. It's called Reign of Gold, and it starts when she was a little girl. And for some reason, it just clicked. It was just that one little 3-sentence that she said. I'm like, that's the book I'm reading. And I read it, and it moved me so deeply. It was exactly what I needed as my antidote to all the intellectual stuff that I had been doing. And I was promised myself that it had such an impact on me that I said, I'm going to read this every year, and I've never read it since. Stick to my promises. So we're going to read it this year. And as I just read 8 pages, we're going to go slow with all these books. You don't ever have to worry about falling behind. And I just read these first 8 pages, and it's just little 8 pages. And it reminds me, too, of the value of why Spirit picked this book. One of the things that Houston Smith points out in his introduction is that the bulk of human history actually was nature, spirit, nature, religion. That these world's religions are actually relatively new in the last few thousand years. But prior to that, our traditions were with the indigenous cultures, and spirituality, it was oral tradition, and it was very connected with the earth. And as many of us know, then the world's religions came, and so a lot of the world's religions were then integrated into this nature religion, so that they could continue on sort of doing both. So if you're in Japan, Shintoism is right alongside of Buddhism. Shintoism is their spirit, nature spirit religion from that country, and it is taught and integrated along with Buddhism in many ways. This is the same idea, but with Christianity. So the opening of this book, Lupe, who was the queen at this party, this woman was talking about, she's 6 years old, and she wakes up and immediately is giving thanks for the miracle of a new day, and talking about the stars and feeling the glory of the stars, and then going out into the earth and celebrating the miracle of the earth and the animals. And she's just and you just see it infused in just everything, how she feels, and it just fills my heart. And yet Christianity does play a role, the Catholicism, in the story. And these two families go through a lot of challenges, as we see, but always it goes deep into their heart and into their soul. New Thought, for a long time, if you were in Unity or religious science, one of the things they'd always say is we're practical. And the reason why that became an issue is because sometimes spirituality can be so heady, or we can be, even mysticism, it's so lofty, it's so high and transcendent. What does it have to do with my everyday life? What does it have to do with the earthiness, the ground, the earth in which I walk, and feel it and sense it through life's struggles and challenges? And they really, to me, this book brings forth the richness of their soul in the midst of all their challenges as two different families. I felt it. I feel it. It's not an intellectual process. It's a deep, heartfelt, soulful journey of bringing it to earth. And so we carry this into our exploration of what is my path. Is this just an abstract idea? Are these just ideas that I like and resonate with? Or how is it actually impacting me in my everyday life as I make choices every day, as I may struggle with work or finances or relationships or whatever is happening in my everyday life? Does my path, does any of these world's religions that I'm learning, does any of that even impact what's happening in my everyday life? Or is it just things I like to think about? Or is it actually going deep into my heart, into the earthiness of my soul and my body and the world in which I'm living and impacting it? So we want to feel the transcendence, but we also want to feel the depth and the immanence of our spiritual path in every area of our life. And so the Reign of Gold is to bring forth that energy as we go on this journey. So that's our journey for the year. We're going to be looking at the world's religions. We're going to be looking at the spirituality within and behind these world's religions in our everyday moment, and how is it applying to our everyday life. What is my path? Opening to revelations and insights and ahas. Do I have a sense of my path of where it's going? Do I have a path that has lineage? Do I have a path that has deep roots? Or is my path primarily just living in the moment? And it just is. It doesn't have any qualifiers. Where do I land on that? So how deep is my path? How wide is my path? Every one of these religions has a cosmology of how the universe works. What is the cosmology of my path? Could I talk with someone? Could I describe to someone what my cosmology is? And what are the heights of my path? What's the highest possibility of my path? What's that mountaintop? Do I have a sense of a mountaintop, a path that's going somewhere that has a mystical high ideal? Do I carry that? So these are all the wonderful questions we get to explore: the depth, the roots, the width, the cosmology, the heights, the mysticism of our individual paths. And that's the journey that we are taking individually and collectively. Who are we as a community? Do we have a path that has roots, that has a lineage? Or are we just sort of whatever is arising in the moment? Do we have a cosmology as a collective that can sustain all this diversity and yet create commonality? And do we have a height? Do we have a sense of where we are evolving to? Do we have a high transcendent ideal to which we are striving as a community? Isn't it glorious? So exciting. What is your path? We're opening to revelations, insights, and ahas. The books are just fingers pointing at the moon, but real is what's going to be revealing itself through and as you. And may we please share it with one another throughout this entire year, because we impact one another. We hear stories. We open. I was thinking whether I was looking at time. No, I won't open it. I won't open it for thoughts right now. Let's turn within. And we're going to be in that wonderful Joel Goldsmith energy of letting go of everything that we think that we know. Letting go of our own personal agendas in this moment. Letting go of yesterday's mana, letting go of all the ideas and thoughts of what we believed is true. And let's just be open in this moment. Let's feel into the awareness right now. Not yesterday, not tomorrow, not an hour from now, but right now in this moment. Behind all of our thinking, behind all of our emotions, behind whatever is going on with us physically, behind all appearances. There is this ever-present oneness. And it is present. It is power. It is alive. It is good where there is no opposite. It is love, it is beauty, it is abundance, it is harmony, it is grace where there is no opposite. It is absolute and unchanging. It does not come and it does not go. It is fully, wholly, and completely being itself all of the time. And in this wonderful moment, we recognize that there is no separation. We align our thoughts with this awareness that there is only one power and one presence, one love, one joy, one harmony, one intelligence, and we are it. That it is alive and activated as our mind. It is alive and activated as our heart. It is alive and activated as our body. It is everything that we have ever been and ever will be. It is impossible for us to be outside of this infinite and eternal light in life. Everything in our life is through and as this one power and this one presence. And we are conscious of that reality right here and right now. And we are aligning ourselves with the all power and the all good of the universe because we are remembering to remember who we really are. Beautiful and powerful and grace-filled, good expressions of this eternal one. That each and every one of us is essential for the beauty and the harmony of God's heaven on earth. We are here to creatively express this oneness as only we can do. No one can show up in the way that we show up, with our voice, with our thoughts, with our body, with our beingness. We are it now. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to change anything about ourselves or fix anything about ourselves because there's nothing outside of this one. We are already it now. We are this power and this presence now on every level and dimension of our being. Things that we like and things that we don't like. It is all a beautiful expression of this one power and this one presence now. We just accept all of it now. We open our hearts and our bodies and our minds and our souls to the beauty and the power of the presence now. We are awake now. This is the truth now. We are the living miracle now. And how grateful I am to be in a room full of conscious beings who have said yes to the truth and reality of who they are, and this wonderful experience of exploring not only who we are in the absolute, but who we get to express in this relative experience. To experience and know the relative journeys that each and every one of us on, this beautiful path that was made individually, perfectly, with our name on it, just for us, tailor-made just for us, and we are opening our souls and our bodies and our minds and our hearts to know and feel into this wonderful path in which we've been called, because our path and who we are is one and the same thing. It is a glorious thing to behold. It is a glorious thing to celebrate, and I celebrate it now. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, God. In deep abiding joy and everlasting peace, I release this word now, and I invite us all to say together, and so it is. Amen. Amen.
So it is, and so it is, and so it is. Amen. 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 So it is.